Welcome to the Real Bible Discussion Group YouTube channel, offering an input on a post from the group. Can someone do the will of God without accepting Jesus Christ and make heaven?
Hello and welcome to the Real Bible Discussion Group YouTube channel. I'm Leo Alves, your host, and today I'm here to talk to you about a post that's doing pretty good in the Facebook group. Let me share the screen here and go to the post. And the post says, can someone do the will of God without accepting Jesus Christ and make heaven? The reason why I picked this post is because this post question is interesting. Because it could trigger another question that I'm going to talk about. But first, let me make give my input about this post. Can someone do the will of God without accepting Jesus Christ and make heaven? The clear answer to me is no. Number one, you cannot be saved without accepting Jesus Christ. We know that because Jesus Christ said in John 14:6, no one comes to the Father except through me. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And the life, nobody comes to the Father except through me. In Acts 4:12, we know that it was said that there's no other name that was offered to mankind that could save unless the name of Jesus Christ. I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not quoting to the letter. So, in this sense, no. The answer is no, you cannot. But here's another question that this question could have triggered, and it's a very common question. We see that all the time in this group, in any Bible discussion group. And the question is, can someone do the will of God without having met Jesus Christ or accepting Jesus Christ? And that triggers a question that brings the people of the Old Testament in this picture. How were the people of the Old Testament saved if they knew not Jesus Christ, right? So how about that? What would you have to say about this question? How were people saved before Jesus Christ? And how did they do the will of God without having met Jesus Christ, the Messiah? Well, we know that Noah did the will of God, building the ark. We know that Abraham did the will of God, living his home, and later on, a big ask of God that was like, hey, I'm saying big ask because we just try to emphasize the asking, to sacrifice his son Isaac, which he agreed to until he went through with it, and God said, no, you don't have to do that. It was just testing his faith. So we know that people in the Old Testament they were saved by their faith. But faith in what? Faith in the promise of God, the promise of the coming of the Messiah. God said to Abraham, through your seeds, all the nations of the earth will be blessed, right? And then we know that Paul comes in Galatians 3:16 and say, and that seed is Jesus Christ. The seed that God told Abraham about is Jesus Christ. So Abraham had faith in that. So in a way, people from the Old Testament were looking forward to it, the Messiah. And people from the New Testament were looking backwards to the cross. Because Jesus Christ's sacrifice is timeless. He didn't just die for people that accepted him on the New Testament, but also for the Old Testament people who also accepted him by the promise, by having faith in the promise of God of the coming of the Messiah who would pay for the sins in the same way that God pays for your past sins, your present sins, and your future sins. Jesus Christ's sacrifice on the cross paid for the sins of the Old Testament people and of the New Testament people. So Jesus Christ's sacrifice is timeless, right? But can they do the will of God without accepting Jesus? Yes, people of the Old Testament did it, right? We know that Abraham, Moses did the will of God, leading the people out of Egypt. Joshua completed the work, bringing them into the promised land, conquered Canaan. And all of the prophets and all of the people that came after that play a big role in God's work in the New Testament, also did the will of God without having accepting Jesus Christ the way we do today, but they did accept Jesus Christ by faith, knowing that the Messiah would come. So let's browse the post and see about some of the comments there, and I'll revisit this post. First comment here by Charles. I'm not saying their last name because I don't know if they want to participate in the video and stuff, but I'll just say the first name because it's common names. Charlie said no. Every time, again, I love that everybody participates. I want to see everybody commenting in every post. But when you say no, you leave no other. We don't know why you say no. You said no. So it would be nice if you said no or yes, and then continue to explain your points. Rob said, sure can. But the motivation would be wrong. That's what the Lord passage in Matthew is all about. I'd love to, Rob, if you're watching this video, give us the passage so we know what you're talking about, okay? Jim said, no, because nobody can do the will of God, period. Well, Jim, can you explain what you mean by nobody can do the will of God, period? Because we just talked about Noah, Abraham, Moses, Joshua, all of these people from the Old Testament who actually did the will of God without having accepting Jesus yet. They did it by faith, and faith in the promise of a new covenant. And the covenant, all these covenants that God made with them, points out to Jesus. So can you explain what you mean by nobody can do it the will of God, period? Thank you. I appreciate that. And then we have what Emmanuel says, it's not possible. I'd love to know why. There's a lot of no's and no, but not really explaining why. Lamal said, it's possible. If it is not possible, our ancestors, Gentiles ancestors, were all doomed. That's kind of my point that I made. No, but it doesn't mean that because they like the key point here is faith in the covenant that God made with all of them in the Old Testament. So I'll revisit this post. Thanks for watching, and leave your comments down below if you agreed or disagreed with my points. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you soon.